I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for liberty and justice for all.
Councilmember James Blair,
Excuse.
Councilmember Joseph Richardson,
Present.
Councilmember Joshua Crossman,
Here.
Councilmember Holly Smith, here, Councilmember Brian Hess,
Here.
Councilmember Lynn Roy,
here.
Councilmember Terry Kaminsky,
Here.
Mayor Joe DePindo.
Here. First, we have Chief Carlson. After this, a couple things.
Okay, so what I'm gonna talk to you guys about today is a couple of contracts. One's an amendment. The first one's gonna be the LEARNS contract, law enforcement records management system. For that one, all we're doing is adding Thurston County Sheriff's Department to that. So what I'm gonna be requesting is that approval for Mayor DePinto to sign that for us. In 2009, Mayor at the time, Ron Harding, signed a contract for us to the City of Police Department to be a part of a consortium group with Olympia, Lacey, Tumwater, and Tenino for a records management system. Central Square was the company that we went with. We're still using them today. The goal is to try to find an upgraded system, and what we're doing is Thurston County Sheriff's Department requested to be a part of that group. So because of the initial contract, it obviously requires us to get that amendment in order to get them to add, so we have to amend the initial contract. To have them on this group is huge because we network with this report management system. If somebody in Olympia, the police department adds somebody to this system, we in Yelm can obtain that at any time. So we get a record of names, contacts, vehicles. There's numerous different things that we benefit from having them a part of it. Not only that is with the court system in Thurston County, it's a benefit for them to have access to our reports as well. So if we arrest somebody for a felony, we have to have PC statements. So the Thurston County courts can access that report directly versus having the sergeant come in, print the report off, fax it to them. This way they can access it right away, so we have to wait for that. So basically, all I'm asking for is just approval for Mayor DePinto to sign that contract at Thurston County Sheriff's Department to our record management system, and we're in the process of trying to develop and find a program.
Yeah. So it sounds like a central database that everybody can just, okay.
It's everyone writes the reports on this system.
Gotcha.
And like I said, it's everyone that's out there, like any contact of any person. We put them in the names section of this report writing system. If it's a certain vehicle that we're looking for regarding a crime or whatever, it gets put into that system. So anyone that's a part of that has access to everything we need. And then you can imagine every day, multiple different new information is being put in there that we have access to. So it's pretty important. Any questions? No?
I was just mentioning to Lynn that I happened to see that this gentleman from the Lacey shooting was from Yelm, so something like that would go in the system. Do we know anything about this?
I don't know a lot about it. I just was briefed barely a little bit about the whole situation, but the individual did,
So if Lacey Police put something in the system, then you would know all about it.
absolutely.
So that's
I guarantee you we have it as well.
interesting.
There's no additional cost, correct?
No additional costs.
Thank you.
So the cost that we pay, we roughly pay about $28,000 a year now for our part in that program. And it's based upon our population and the population of users, so many officers are going to use it. So that's not going to change. Good question. Okay. Perfect. And the next one is the school contract. And just asking again for the mayor's signature on the agreement for the SROs, working in the schools. Some of the things that the schools have bumped this up for is we used to have 1.5 positions in the schools, one officer full-time, an officer part-time, that officer works crime prevention, the other half of that. The schools are requesting that we have 3 full-time SROs in the schools. Starting, the contract would start for the 23 through to the 25 school year. It's a 3-year contract. Before it was a 1-year-to-year contract, because it's linked up with the union contract with our officers. It was important for us to go over that 3-year contract so we can revisit that, and then the monies that they would provide for those officers individually would then go up based upon how the scale of pay raise for the officers, just to keep in I guess, consistency with that. They're also providing a 5% pay bump for the officers that are SROs while they're in SRO during the particular school year. It's just a great contract. The schools are absolutely on board with having more security in the schools. How it would work is the 3 officers, one would be assigned to the high school, another one to the middle school, and the other one to Ridgeline. And that would be their primary school. The benefit of that obviously is that you develop that relationship with the kids, and then encouraging them to coach sports, just to have that interaction and gap that bridge between the police department and the students. And I think that's going to obviously bleed out in our community, because it just doesn't stop in the schools. It obviously, once they're out of school, they come to the parks, they come around the town. So I think that interaction with us is going to be huge. So
you talked about the SROs coaching sports as well. Is that a volunteer, or can they get paid by the
they can
schools?
get paid by the schools, yeah.
As they should, all right.
Yeah, they get paid by the schools for that. Yes, sir.
We'll just keep, we still have 2 officers on the streets besides these ones as well
Correct.
at all times.
Yeah, in order to fulfill this requirement, obviously, we would have to, our staffing would change just a little bit. Again, like I said, we virtually gave them 2 already in the previous contracts. We would just have to add that additional person to give them that 3rd officer and still maintain our staffing that we have on the street.
So the SROs, back in the day when I was in school, they did that BEAR program.
Correct.
That's
Yeah.
pretty cool. It was drug abuse resistance education. You guys don't know. But is there anything of that nature,
Yeah,
perhaps?
so some of the classes that they would be putting out as far as, so they have ALICE training, which is an active shooter training
Gotcha.
that the SROs would go through. They would also then go and teach the students and staff. We also benefit from that from the city, because they would go to City Hall, like Don Louis was an active shooter trainer. We would go to different places here in the city and teach staff. You can go anywhere and teach them that education. So it's a benefit to everybody. But the active shooter training stuff, crisis prevention and intervention, and then critical incident response type stuff. But they would also teach classes on bullying, harassment, whatever they needed as far as any kind of, they're seeing a trend within the school that they need some education about the SROs.
So it's like some, we're not just trying to have them on site, we're trying to influence the culture.
Yes.
That's good.
Yeah, and it's about the interaction. We want to make sure that the people that we put in the schools from the police department have that right personality.
Yeah.
To connect with the kids, and that's the huge piece right there. It's not always about trying to keep order and,
Yeah.
you know, make sure they're, you know, put them in jail, all that, and none of that. It's about the relationship.
Good.
And once we develop that, I think it's huge. When I was an SRO, I still have kids today that are in their 20s, pushing 30, calling me coach.
Yeah.
Right? So that relationship is huge. And to have 3 officers in the schools to have that connection would only benefit all of us. Yes, sir.
Because you mentioned that it's our staff, being the police force for young, and that it, with them going there, means we have to adjust for when they're at the school. How many hours do they put in per day or per week that then affects bringing in more law enforcement, somebody to fill in for them, or takes time away from them, having quality of life, family life, things like that?
As far as what they work, they're working basically the school hours, so it'd be 7 to 3:30, depending on the school. And as far as them, part of the question in regards to how it affects our regular patrol.
Right, it affects our regular patrol. In other words, we have 4 officers
Okay.
on patrol during that time frame. We actually have 5 officers on duty at that time, correct?
Mhm.
And so that is, what I'm asking about that is, how does it affect us? Because the school is paying their salary of being there. And then if they're there Monday through Friday, that's their 40 hours that they put in. I guess my question is, why is the school not looking at bringing in, I hate the term private security, but somebody like that, that is part of the staff instead of a young police officer that can be
Right.
responsive to the citizens and the residents of Yelm.
Yeah, I think the main thing is what I've already spoken about is that the relationship that we have with the kids. You know, it leads in our community. I see, like I said, when I was in SRO, I still run across those kids. They're adults now, but I think that relationship that we build as police officers to our youth is big. And if it's a security company, they're not gonna have that. And so I think that that's the big piece there. In regards to how it affects our patrol, it's not gonna affect patrol. And if something significant happens in the city, and we need more officers, those 3 officers can help. So they're not just bound by the schools, although that's their primary function. They'll be able to help us.
And just to add to that, it also helps our bottom line as well. They're paying for part of these officers for us, which helps us provide more, as the chief was saying, not just in the schools, but if there's an emergency or a call that they need to attend, we have more officers on the streets to help.
And I understand it, but as I say, they're asking for 3. That's 3 officers, 40 hours a week, Saturday, Sunday off. I'm hoping that they get some time off.
Yeah.
That's their full-time job being in school. They are, in effect, school employees. And I'm trying to figure out how it comes from the city. We pay for their education, their training and everything else like that. And then we put them into the SRO position.
Right.
And yes, I understand that there's an emergency that we need that 5th officer if we have 4 on duty at that time.
Right.
I'm just, my concern is there's resources that, yes, it's true, you want to have a good development and everything of respect for law enforcement, build that wonderful relationship. But the programs that you're talking about, anti-bullying, active shooter drill, things like that, that is a mentorship, that is anybody can provide that kind of relationship. And we don't need to have full-time officers in the schools for the whole day.
Yeah, and obviously their job doesn't end when school's out. So when summer comes or Christmas break comes, those officers come to patrol and they work a regular shift. Normally that's when they'll take a lot of their time off, is during that time in the summers and school breaks. But again, I think that, and I get what you're saying, I do, but honestly, I think the benefit of having our officers in the school and having that relationship, it bleeds out in so many other areas in a positive way.
Can I say something?
Yes, sir.
So I know where you're coming from, Brian, but I really look at this as, it's young community schools. And so it's about community. And so what it kind of is it's showing that as a community, we can work together. And sometimes I feel like students have a lack of respect for somebody that's already in school, but then you have an outside party coming in, so it gives them a different perspective and it also adapts the culture a little bit and gives it a little different influence. I think there's that effectiveness in there. Now, if the school, like you mentioned, was going to go through like their own private security, I think you would lose that respect or acknowledgement of somebody from the outside coming in to be a part of our school, our community. And so I find this of high importance, and I love the fact that the school does pay for that. And so I look at it as a win-win. I see where you're coming from, but I really think when it comes to influencing culture and bringing community, I think this is a main way to do it. I just agree with this completely, just because I remember being a kid and seeing an officer on site going, oh, I'm not gonna act stupid today. But kind of, similar to, but I know where you're coming from. I get you, but I really agree with what this represents. Yeah.
As far as the active shooter, we have things in place where we would not be like the Texas situation.
Right, yes. And again, I don't know the Texas situation, a lot of it, other than obviously wasn't there, so I don't know the decisions that they made and why they made. But in our policy is that if there's an active shooter in a school, Walmart, it doesn't matter. we get there, and if we have the ability to wait a split second for someone else, then we do that. If not, we go in and take care of it.
You know, they just failed to act altogether, so.
Yeah, I can't
That's
speak
weird.
on that.
Can I just ask a question?
Yeah.
How many of our current officers have been SRO officers?
Oh, boy.
Because it seems like it also helps our police department.
Yeah, totally.
You know, because they don't leave the community, these officers
Right.
then may come on full-time in our police
Yeah,
department.
Yeah,
Serving the public.
It does, and it's a three-year contract for the officers as well. So in 3 years, they get reevaluated. If they want to continue, the school makes that decision because they obviously have buy-in on who's going to be that SRO. But after 3 years, that officer now can get out of the program and go back to patrol. And then we have other officers coming in. But because we're kind of transitioning with a lot of officers, I think we might have two, me and Don right now. So, and it benefits us because it bleeds out after the school and the kids at night and they're in town and they see officers, they see that SRO, they're gonna connect. And they're gonna have rapport. And that's huge because I've seen it, I've experienced it. So that's big.
That's exactly what I was gonna say, kind of leading off what he said, but that piece exactly. So if you have a security guard, they go home at night, right? They're not out there at the skate park, for example, where Officer Moody was out there and those kids respect him and they have that relationship from that. So I think I don't think you can put a price on it. I think it's very much needed.
And the good thing is, we're not putting a price on it.
No, true, exactly. Yeah, I said, but yeah, I think.
Yeah.
Did you have a question?
No, you started talking about them working in the summer and everything, and that was, I was gonna ask that you touch on that. So you did. There you go.
Perfect.
so you think it like creates some longevity in our law enforcement? You know, they go to a school, they're an SRO, they feel connected to their community. All of a sudden, they don't want to go take a job somewhere else. They want to stick around.
The
Because-
ownership and what's going on. Absolutely.
I love this stuff, man.
I would just comment,
I just want to make note, Councilmember Blair has joined us on Zoom, so he's.
I would just comment and say, I agree with Brian's point as well, of what he's saying, but the only, another positive side to having an officer there is some of the kids, let's be real, troublemakers are gonna be troublemakers when they get out of school and be adults, so I can see a benefit of having officers experienced with those kids already. When they get out and do some of that contact with them, it would be a little more beneficial if you have an officer that's already familiar with them to deal with them as they go on.
Yeah, and that networking piece after school, it's been many times when Officer Moody is out of school, he's at home, and we have a situation where we need to know something about a student that's in the school district. We have little information about that student, we can contact Don, we give him very little information, and he knows exactly what we're talking about.
That's helpful.
So, and then our access to their programs, so we get addresses, we have all that information. So if we have a situation where we have to be in contact with a student, we have access to their school records to be able to get that address if it's a life and death type situation. So we don't just work it that way. Any other questions? No?
How do you liking your job?
I like it.
Good.
It hasn't changed.
In my own video, I can't.
I hate my job.
Remember, you're good too.
Okay, thank you.
Cody? Are you up?
We don't have any
I
time.
gotta keep.
Yeah, this presentation.
Okay, sweet.
You pass me on that one, I'm good.
I'm gonna stand over here so it makes it easier to operate. Once we're on, press the machine around, let's walk over to it. So I'm gonna talk a little bit about, so before you is gonna be a WR contract probably in the next month. But I want to lead you kind of down the path of how we got here. The only person on this council that was on the council that's here right now was Councilmember Kaminsky. So she's been through this, and she's gone through the process. It started back in 2019. And we've gone through a long process of getting here, but I want to keep all of you and catch you all up so you know how we got here. So when that contract comes and you see that $30 million price tag, you know, you don't run out of the room and start blowing stuff up. You go, hey, we know this is coming. Let's deal with it. Let's handle it. So I'm going to walk you through that now. Oh, I can go back and look at that.
It's because you got an Android, yeah?
It's my work phone, sorry. Back here. Okay. Okay, next slide. Hey, so this is just a timeline of where we've been. I can read you this, and I'll just kind of briefly summarize each one. So in 2019, we have council approved design for parametrics to design an MDR facility, which is membrane bioreactor. There will be a test again. And upgrades to the current SBR plant. SBR is sequenced batch reactor. So an MDR is a semi-permeable membrane. I'm using techno jargon on you. It's pretty much like a sponge type thing where water goes on one side, you force that water through, and all the bacteria stays on one, clean water comes out the other. It's a very simple way of saying it. It's a lot more complicated than that. A sequenced batch reactor is something where we have settling. Right now, if you go to the system, the sewer plant, this is what we currently have. Water, all the septage comes in, not septage, sorry, all the sewer comes in, the water settles, and then the solids settle in a different area. We pump the water out, and the solids get processed. So that's the two differences. So we're building an MDR, we currently have an SBR. In 2020, council approved an add-on of the biodryer. So as some of you may remember, we had this idea that we could, instead of shipping our sludge, so when we get to that waste product that's left over, we have no way of processing it here. So what we have to do is we pay a company to come and pump the sludge out of our tanks and then take it to Shelton or Tacoma, depending on what's over. And that costs a lot of money, upwards of $250,000 a year. So what council had decided to do in 2020 is let's build a biodryer. We can take our sludge, we superheat it, evaporate all the liquids out of it, and you're stuck with a biosolid, a little tiny granule that can be used as fertilizer. That's a Class A biosolid, not a Class B. So Class A biosolids can be used as fertilizer on plants, whatever you want. In 2020, city applies for the low interest loan through Department of Ecology. So in 2020, council and mayor decided it would be beneficial to try to reach out for money. We looked for grants, we looked for a bunch of different options. It was a really good time because of COVID, that loan interest rates dropped to like near nothing. And we were able to secure a really low interest loan, lower than 1.5%, for up to $23 million. So it was a really huge success to do it and apply at that time, because now the same loans, as you can attest from if you're in a realtor market, all those loans are now like 6% or 6.5. So really good time to apply for a loan, and council did. In 2020, once we knew how much the loan was going to be, we were approaching different scenarios for possible rate adjustment. We went in with a worst outlook we could possibly do. If everything went bad and everything went south, how much would we need to adjust rates to compensate for this plan? That's what we went into this idea with. And in 2021, we got the loan, so we accepted the low interest loan from the Department of Ecology, and we discovered that no rate adjustment would be required. So we brought on, as you know, our finance director, Stephanie, and she was able to help with numbers, and we were able to do a lot of calculations. We got together and we figured with the current spending habits we have and the ability to kind of conserve money and in future growth, we wouldn't have to do a rate adjustment to pay for this plan, which is huge. Because in this scenario, when we came back here, we thought we were going to have to raise rates anywhere from $16 to $20 a month, which would be huge, and that's not a good thing. So major kudos to our finance director for helping us with that. In 2022, our WRF plans, this just happened 2 months ago. Our WRF plans were approved by Ecology and are now posted for bid opening. So if you go online to Builders Exchange, you check the newspaper, we are now accepting bids for the WRF. What we expect to see over the next couple of weeks is different parties reaching out and interest and seeing different questions about the project. We'll have a tour of the plant for anyone willing to bid, and we'll take them through the plant, kind of walk them through the plans. The documents are about 300 pages of different plans on what the plant's going to be. And so that's kind of where we're at right now. Next slide. I'll do questions at the end. Oh, no, unless you have a question that's pertaining just to the
Just
slide.
to this.
Yes,
Could you please remind me, how clean are the biosolids?
how clean?
Yeah.
So clean.
How do they get?
Yeah, so so as you know, in our system, if maybe you don't know, we have step tanks in our system. So currently, what gets pumped to the plant is just, for lack of a better term, liquid, right? It's pee. That's what gets pumped to the plant. We actually don't get solids to the plant. So you're like, well, how do you make biosolids? Well, here's the crazy thing about science. Natural process takes place when you have that liquids, and bacteria starts forming to eat those liquids, all the little things that are in there, the ammonia, the nitrates, all of that are in that liquid. Bacteria forms to eat that. That bacteria is left over when the process is done. You're left with clumps of bacteria, which is full of nitrates, other things that are really good for plants, right? So we burn off all the liquid, and you're left with this really nitrate-rich solid that you can pour on anything. It's the same process that people use to make fertilizer, like chicken fertilizer, cow fertilizer. You burn off all the bad stuff, and you're left with a nitrogen-rich material you can use for fertilizer.
What about like phosphates and drug residue and prescriptions and all that?
So the great news about our system, and it's because we have a step tank system, the solids don't make it to us. So you're thinking of PFAS is a popular term, pharmaceuticals, stuff like that, like pills people take, and that stuff gets there. Some of that stuff will come through in the liquid part, but most of it is kept in that solid. So we don't see nearly as much of the septage that would have gravity, like a gravity sewer system. If you go to New York, where you flush, it goes through a sewer system, gets processed, that will have a lot more of that kind of other things you may not want to see. This is very minimal because of our step tank system. So we don't have a large bacteria contamination of stuff that's not just natural stuff.
So ecology says, yes, we're good to go.
Yeah, class A biosolids, you can literally put on everything, similar to reclaimed water. I know people freak out. 20 years ago, we had this reclaimed water discussion, people were like, don't give reclaimed water to plants, it'll turn into whatever. And we've discovered over the last 20 plus years that that's not the case. Reclaimed water is amazing for plant growth, it's super cheap. It actually is better in some cases for like agricultural growth. Make sure you wash your plants first, but besides that, you can eat it, it's great. I mean, the community garden, all these things have been proven, over 20 years, they've proven that reclaimed water is extremely safe. This is the same scenario with biosolids. People are freaking out because it's a brand new thing that's being introduced, but it can be. It's really good for, our biggest thing is this takes away our need to buy fertilizer for like Longmire Park, our baseball fields, things where people would play and do sports on, but we have to spend thousands and thousands of dollars on fertilizer every year. We can now use this biosolids to fertilize those. And if you're concerned, about people don't eat the grass there, but if you're concerned about that, this can be used on agricultural things. Farms buy this stuff up because it's so good at growing stuff. We won't be used on that, but it can be used on that. Yes, Councilmember Hess.
You mentioned that because we have the step septic system, but you also mentioned a month or so ago that with new developments coming online, that we're getting rid of the step septic system. We're going to now have the wonderful chopper blade, the grinder, and all that's going to start flushing through. Where do the solids go at that point?
Yes.
From those systems.
Very good. So our new plant will be designed to handle those. So we can't put a grinder pump online under our current plant because we don't have a headworks. Headworks is a filtration system that things go through before they go to the plant. So right now our system can only handle liquids. If a solid gets in there, it just goes. So, our new system will be able to handle that kind of solid material with filtration and systems preemptively before it actually gets to the MPRs.
Right, but in reference to Councilmember Kaminsky's question of as you put, pharmaceuticals and all that other wonderful stuff, now we're having solids come through and actually coming to the plant. Where do they get separated prior to going into the system?
So a lot of them will be used to help with the natural process. So what you want, an ideal plant, so our plant suffers because, I'm gonna give you a little technical jargon here. Our plant suffers because we have so much liquid, we don't have enough BOD or food, right? Solids are food for this bacteria. This bacteria needs food. When we have just this liquid coming in, we don't have enough bacteria. Our plant often gets sick, high ammonia levels because it's liquid. So when we have a little bit of solids coming in, because you're still gonna have all these step tanks, we're not gonna retrofit every step tank in the city. But we'll bring some of the newer, bigger developments online will be grinder pumps, and eventually we have that gravity system designed in the master plan community. That'll bring solids to the plant to allow the process to happen more naturally, which is great. It will prevent us from violating, and that will make cleaner material in the long run and us not having to add stuff. You do have that pharmaceutical thing that's being researched right now, the PFAS, with all these solids coming in. Ecology has deemed that we are not, we're not at risk for that here, but it's something to keep an eye on and watch out for as we, as science goes along, we find more about it, how to filter those systems. All right, so as you know, we're just gonna walk you through some of the stuff we've done so far and stuff council has done so far. So one of the things we started doing is we went from a kind of reactive maintenance system to a planned maintenance system. The planned maintenance system has actually helped yield quite a bit of budget savings. When I first did this slide, and 2 years ago, when we first started this, it was like, we expected to be around 15%. Now we've actually seen it. We've been about 20% savings in our sewer system just from doing planned maintenance versus, crud, this is broken, let's go fix it. Instead it's, hey, this is on due to be scheduled to be repaired, let's go ahead and get out there and do some maintenance now to fix it. So we already saved 20% budget on that, and that's helping fund this plan. City staff delaying cost of replacement with the new plan on the horizon. So one thing, any big part that fails, if we don't have to fix it, we don't. We let it sit there, and it sounds weird, but we let it sit there because eventually it's gonna get replaced. Now we have this plant so close, we don't wanna spend $300,000 on a brand new valve system when we have a new plant coming in. We can manage and jimmy it for a little while, we don't, that's what we're doing. City council in 2020 implementing phase 3 and 2 at the same time. This is adding that bio dryer on and allowing us to have a septic receiving station. So the approximate savings in our hopeful when it's built in 2023 will be about $550,000 for the sewer plant, which is a huge number. And it's going to cost us upfront, around $3 to $5 million for the biosolids part. But if you look at that savings and,
That's $550,000 a year?
a year, yes. So you look at that and, 5 to 10 years, we'll have paid off that savings. And then we can even start generating revenue, which is huge from bringing in other septage. Public Service Committee in 2021, Councilmember Kaminsky probably remembers this, was brainstorming ideas how to offset impact for utility customers. And what we did with that ended up discovering is we were able to lower water rates last year. If you remember, we were able to kind of lock in a new water rate schedule that brought some relief to customers. And also that summer impact wasn't as huge to people when they use their water. And it's been, comparatively to 2 years ago and the amount of complaints I was getting about water bills at this time of year, I haven't had any of those except for the random one person, where before it was hundreds. So that was a really good thing we were able to institute with council and mayor last year. And then also yearly active legislative agenda in 2021 was really huge. We were able to secure $800,000 for one of the bio dryers, so we could buy one of the bio dryers without any city funding whatsoever, which is amazing. Okay, one more time, the thing should pop up right away. No, that ain't. Okay, so I don't know why I didn't pop up on there. Yeah. Go through it. I'll tell you what each one said when we get there. That's an answer, yes. Okay, so there was 5 steps here. We are here at visible step number 5. This is bid process. So we had planning process 2019, and it went on and on and on. We are now at step 5, which is we are in the currently bidding process with construction's planned for August. So we should start construction on this new plant in August. So here's kind of where we are. Bidding process is currently open. Bidding will close in late July, which allows us to then process the bids. One thing we're required as a city is we take all the bids in, the lowest qualified bidder will get the award. So what will happen is we'll bring all the bids in, we'll check for all the documents. If they have everything and they're qualified, we will go with the lowest qualified bidder. That's a requirement by law we have to follow. Then we'll run, Stephanie and I, mostly Stephanie because she's way better at this than I, will run the new loan numbers and make sure that we are still good to lock in rates where they are. If a rate adjustment is needed, that will be brought to council. We don't anticipate a rate adjustment in the upward range being needed in this budget cycle, but 2 years from now, when we reevaluate this and we're closer, our growth will be we'll know where our growth is, we'll have grown over 2 years. We'll be able to get a lot more accurate numbers and see what we can do with rates, either raise, lower, or keep the same. I mentioned this, construction will start in late August. It's a 24-month project, 18 to 24 months. I'm going to rule on the end of that and say it's going to take 24 months to build this, with the biosolids and septage coming on about 6 to 9 months after we start. The rest of the plant will take a little longer. The good news is during construction, your toilets will still flush, your sinks will still run, and you won't have to worry about anything popping up anywhere, literally or figuratively. So, yeah, no interruptions in service while we are building, which is great. And then the new plant will handle our future growth of Yelm until 2045. The really cool news about this, I was gonna add it, but I don't wanna clog up the slide, is that when we get to the point where we need to add more, it's simply just adding another membrane in. The plant's designed to be upgraded up until 2070 or our full growth until Yelm can't grow anymore. So the plan, just drop another membrane in, a couple $1 million. Sounds like a lot, but when you're building a whole new plant for 30 million, you can spend 1 million to just drop a membrane in and you're good to go for another 5,000-6,000 people. So this plant will take us to life of all of us being well out of here. Councilmember Richardson.
Does this impact the pocket gopher in any way?
Yeah, the worst part is that Gopher's toilet might flush a little bit. So, no, there's no, yeah, so we don't have to worry. The good news is we're building the plant on the site of the current plant. So we're not expanding the footprint. We're just taking some of the old SBRs, retrofitting them, and there's a kind of grass area right when you drive into the plant if you haven't been there. Then we're gonna put the brand new MDR on, and then we'll upgrade some of the buildings.
What's going on the other
Yes.
side? Cody?
Other side of,
Like at the end of that main road, what's going down there? You know, the
The
new
dog
land, but through the dog park to the other side.
oh, so that road, that'll connect, that'll be our new entrance. So that road that goes through the dog park.
Yeah.
Right, that'll be a main access will be for the dog park, but it continues going on.
Right.
That'll be the new access because that old access, we like to plan ahead, right? I was thinking to myself when we were planning this, I was like, well, eventually we're gonna have septic trucks coming in here. How are we gonna have people coming into work when you have trucks lined up trying to dump off septic? What if we built a second entrance? So we built that second entrance preemptively, knowing that that growth is gonna happen when we have the septic trucks. This will be the new access for workers. So they'll come, workers will come in through there, everybody else can use the dog park, there'll be a little fence that opens up with a key card, that our guys can go through and everybody else can use the dog park. And then the septic trucks will continue on NP Road. So, we just wanted to plan accordingly, we probably won't need that road, I would imagine, for, I don't know, 6 to 12 months. But it's good to have it ahead of time, we can also use it as kind of construction access now too. So we can bring construction vehicles in and not have to limit our guys where they're waiting for, giant
Clog
poles
up
or.
road.
Exactly, so just a great idea, good foresight on council's part to put that road into the dog park, good job, guys. I appreciate it. No, it was really good, it was a good idea, you guys. Any other questions about this? I know it's a lot to take in, you're gonna see the contract, and that's why I wanted to prep you on this, you'll be seeing me, and you'll be seeing Pat again, when we come to the contract, and it's gonna be, upwards of 30 million, it might be hopefully less, but that's all planned for and in there, and we'll go over those exact numbers when we get them and go over the big fires.
Thank you.
Start smelling like the
Mayor's report.
All right, we are, we're doing our beautification grant. We got 3 applications for that. So we will be evaluating next week. Correct. Monday.
Who is on that committee?
Myself, Councilmember Smith. Who else? Who are the,
I'm on the committee, Stephanie, finance director, and then Chris Picaro, the building official, to make sure that any improvements meet the current code.
any other questions on that? Cool. We have opened the outside agency request for the city. You may have seen that on Facebook today, our social media, it's been on our website since last week. And so this is part of our push to increase transparency and equity in our budget process and so moving forward. And for all those agencies, outside agencies that have received funding from the city in the past, we are reaching out directly to them too, so they have the most awareness for it, make sure they can apply again and everything. So we'll reach out in person for that. And that's really all I've got. Any other questions?
Do you know when those outside agencies will be?
This week. Yeah, and it's due at the end of the month, I believe, they're 29th, July 29th. That's all I've got.
We'll go around the room. I'll start with James. Can you hear us? Does he have anything he wants to?
James, can you hear us?
I can hear you.
In the middle of the room.
Do you have anything you want to say?
Just towards Cody, I appreciate all the work you've done on this. I mean, I've been listening to it the entire time, so I'm pretty well aware of everything that's going on, and I really appreciate the way you've gone about it, and making sure that we're not going to have to raise prices, hopefully, and just keep kicking ass, but
Okay, is that it?
That's definitely James.
Yeah, thank you. All right. Or
Oh, I don't have
Councilmember
any,
Richardson,
I don't
sorry.
have any initiatives. I was gonna make one about getting blankets here, but I love the cool air.
And what's hot?
It's pretty warm
It's
now.
good
All
now.
right, one.
Next.
Me?
Councilmember Craftsman.
Nothing to present at the moment. Lots of things bounce around.
Councilmember Hess.
Nothing, no new initiatives at this time.
Councilmember Wood.
Did you have to check her name?
No, I just.
I do have one thing that was, brought out of the mushball tournament. We did the national anthem at the beginning of the games. There's no flag at Longmire. Is there something we can do to?
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Some flags up. Well,
An American one.
An American.
Yeah, yeah.
Not
Not
Canadian.
Canadian.
There are,
Yeah.
like,
I know.
two of our council members
I
are
know,
Canadians.
That's a solid percentage.
It is. It's more than any of the surrounding communities, actually. Canadians are taking over council apparently.
As long as they stay over there.
Councilmember Kaminsky.
Yes, I do have something. I've been meeting with the Arts Commission and communicating with you guys about what's going on. On the 27th of this month, there's going to be the first meeting of the task force to work on creating the creative district. But I wanted to let you know, aside from that, in efforts to make anything happen at all, they're working on two things that, and I'm telling you this because they're coming to council with it. They're gonna put together a little spiel about it and get figures and numbers, but they want to have an open discussion with, there's a protocol that they're gonna do based on, I think, Olympia or whatever format we had. There'll be public input, but they're going to ask local artists to put in a design to do a wrap on a utility box. The one that's in front of CarStar, that big, huge square thing. So it's right in the center of town. They want to do that. They want to put it out to the public for artists to make a, what do you call that? To do a design and submit it. And they are looking at money to pay for that. And they want to also pay the artist $500 to $1,000. So they're going to be coming and asking for money from the beautification fund, which is kind of why I don't like calling beautification, that thing beautification and our thing beautification.
So there's no beautification fund.
Well,
But we'll look.
you know what I
into
mean? There are
Yeah.
monies from the, you know what I'm saying? I
We
don't know
will,
what to
yeah.
call it. So they'll be coming forward with that. And then there's also another, they want to do a wind feature somewhere on public property. And these things are beautiful and they want to get a big one and they're going to be thousands of dollars. So just a heads up, they're going to be coming and asking for money to start something for the Arts
What's the
Commission.
wind feature?
A wind, yeah,
Like the wind.
like a moving wind
It's
feature.
like a moving, how would you say, it's stationary and it kind of moves and creates an illusion as it blows with the wind.
You should know, right?
Mhm.
I've seen
Just speak, just speak.
Yeah, speak this.
that. Rock, paper, scissors.
Can someone clarify for me the difference between the beautification funds that we have the grants coming through and the funds that the Arts Commission would be requesting? And why do they need to be separate? And why couldn't the Arts Commission come up with ideas and then apply to this pool? Anybody?
So we have a fund, it's, Fund 302, and it's the municipal building fund. And in that municipal building fund,
we had a line item to, do improvements in the city. And it was, we were just referring to it as beautification. It's a line item in a fund. So very little of that has been spent this year. And so more than likely, both of these programs would use money out of that 302 fund.
But the one
But
with
further,
beautification.
I
has to
can
be-
differentiate, because we talked about this, right, Kathy? The beautification that you're referring to is more like a facade improvement.
It's
It's
a
geared for the
beautification grant.
businesses.
Yeah.
It's for the businesses on the main street. This other stuff are the Arts Commission's projects.
It's their request.
It's the request.
Yeah. It's a request for council. Council doesn't have to necessarily accept it.
Oh, in Fund 302, what's the total amount and what's the separate amounts?
Oh, I don't know, but
Not down to the penny.
so that fund is used for, basically general government improvements, like, you know, if we were to, like, this building is a general government building.
Sure.
If the heating system went out, instead of using money from the general fund, we would use it from this building fund.
Okay.
We also do projects like for the parks. Most of the parks projects come out of that fund. Right? So it's separate from the general fund. It has, we look at the fund as a total and say, how much money is in the fund, right? How much do we want to always have in the fund? Do we always want to have a reserve of 150,000, say? So then maybe Cody has brought forward projects totaling 300,000, right? So we really need to look at the fund as a whole. What city projects do we need to accomplish? If there's anything left, do we want to allocate it to this beautification program that, you know, HOA can apply for, or business can apply for, or do we want to use some of it to do improvements like what Terry had been working on? So there's not, in the 2022 budget, the city earmarked in that fund $50,000 for beautification.
And how much of that is left?
49,000.
Wow,
Yeah.
the
But
savings.
that does not mean that we have to spend all.
Sure.
So,
Can I do one more follow-up question? I'm so sorry. Girls on a roll. Okay, for the beautification grant, the process is you apply for it, it goes through the committee,
Yeah.
it goes to council. For the art commission, they come up with a proposal, it goes through their commission, it goes to council.
I think.
Why are they not
But this
the
one over
same?
here, this
I
one
think
pays
it's-
ahead on their own,
It's,
and then they get reimbursed.
The funding is actually separated. The grant program
I
is its
get it.
own funding. This funding that she's talking about from the Fund 302 would be for things such as, the planters that would get hung up, the flower planters along the street that would get put up there. That could be used because it's to help make the city and the municipal buildings around, look a little bit better. For projects that Cody might be coming up with a park, like the flag that you want to get put up. That could be something that's down there. But the grant,
Those would be.
is pulled out, not from, the grant money doesn't come from Fund 302, does it?
That was the plan, was to have it come from the 302. And they're very similar. I will give you that, they're
So,
very
wait a
similar.
minute.
We're just trying to put a process and transparency to what we use the money for and who is using it.
I get that. And I think my question is, why wouldn't the Arts Commission go through the same funnel and steps to
That's not necessarily a bad idea.
just do it?
I think part of what I would say about some of those meetings, that part of it was for the grant, you have to pay up front and
Yeah.
get reimbursed. So the commission was like, where's that money coming from up front?
Okay,
So they needed it to be funded by council versus going to a grant, paying for it, because who's paying for that? The city would pay for it, and then getting reimbursed for it.
And I would also say that if you wanted to have it go through that process, I think that they need to be made priority over a business or an HOA or something like that, because they're doing something for the city as a whole, not for a small little community that the city might see. They're trying to do things for the creative art, the creative district, as well as trying to help beautify the city and do things with municipal buildings and some of the things that are the city centric, not a business centric or an HOA centric.
I guess I don't know that I agree with that, because the utility box, I would put that in the same, I don't know, category as the painting of the outside of a business building. You're getting the same end result.
But I think the
Right?
utility box wasn't the property of the business. It's actually the
Utility
property
box
of
doesn't have any
the Department
payment coming
of
from it.
Transportation.
And city beautification like flowers are in Cody's thing, but, and Stephanie, I know where all this is coming from because of the dilution of everything that I tried to do by creating and asking for money. I asked for money 2 years in a row. There were 2 separate amounts. There's money left over. And so part of the whole mural project was to get a big bang for our buck and go for something huge that would be visually good. So as a result of a few Facebook replies, that all got thrown in the garbage. And now this money, the same money is gonna be used to do wind chimes and other things. That's what's gonna happen. But I don't think the grant money should be called beautification because it's too convoluted.
I believe that the grant program is used in other municipalities. So it's something that other municipalities started doing. We saw it and thought, well, this is a great way
Yes,
to get that accountability. The Arts Commission is an advisory group to City Council. And they are forming this district.
And I love the Creative Arts District. I've sat on a lot
So
of
they
that
can,
stuff.
get
but
grants.
aside from that district, they wanna ask for this money for these
I would
projects.
encourage them to not look at the city as their only source of funding for those projects.
And they won't, but they wanna start with something, just like I wanted to start with something, like just let's put
So it's
something. up.
very similar. I agree with you.
Could they apply for that grant? I'm so sorry.
I just want to make a recommendation in reference to, because we're talking, I see it as actually 2 pools of funds that are different. One of them is, as you put it, we got, how much do we want to have as reserve that is for municipal funds that gets pulled out? The grant, I'd like to make sure that maybe we need to put it into our budget, that this is how much is in the budget, it's set off to the side, nobody else can touch it except for people apply and the committee approves. If the money doesn't get used up for the whole year, then that money that excess money gets rolled into the next year and not as much needs to be put in. In other words, we sit down and say for the 2023 budget, $100,000 going to the grant program, there's $100,000 that people get to apply for. And
Council did that. They set that amount, it was
Well,
25,000.
no, but what I'm saying is that is for the budget, and then for the beautification that comes with the art commission, parks, all these other things, that comes out of Fund 302. And that one is, 1 year it may be a big fund, another year it may be a small fund, but it's not always the same. But for the budget for the beautification grant is always the exact same amount until we find out that, hold it here, where there's more additional revenue coming in because of these things that these businesses are doing and the HOAs and things like that that apply for it.
I'm not following. I feel like that's what we're doing now.
No, we're not doing that right now because right now it's the Fund 302, which is is it separated as Cody only gets 75,000 of it and another thing only gets so much of it, or is it a?
There's accounting purposes too for having less.
Right, we look at that for every year because it goes up and down, right? It's
Right.
not a set, it's mostly funded through retail, is the main funding source of Fund 302.
Right, but what I'm talking about for that, for the beautification grant, that is, there is a separate line item, it's a whole separate thing. And it is always whatever is decided on year after year after year, it's always set up to the side, comes from general fund. It sits right there and is available. And if it's not fully used during the year, because the various projects that get brought in don't use up the whole fund, then to replenish it the next year, it's only that amount to bring it back up. The Fund 302 is still left as, if you put it fluid, it fluctuates up, down, it may be the same, it may be less, because what happens if one year it goes from $300,000 to, we got $75,000.
This
And
would
we,
be, this would be a good initiative for you during the budget process to suggest.
so that's what I'm suggesting is.
Not right now, but.
Right, no,
during the budget process.
when we start
Yeah.
going through the budget process,
Let's
let's look at doing this where, that way you have the two separate. And it's very easy to go, grant fund is coming from right here, and the other one is flexible for the city to reach into and grab what needed.
Sure, and there's certain things that the auditor's office requires and certain reasons that finance department has so many with the bar system, the different categories and all that losses.
How we account for everything. I would caution you want to be flexible in this beautification grant program because, right, our economy goes up and down and you don't want to pass legislation that says every year we're going to put 25,000 into this pot because you don't want to go, next year the economy changes, we don't have 25,000, now you have to go change your legislation because you're changing the amount. I think you can obtain the goal of doing these grants through the budget cycle, through having discussions of here's our reserves, here's how much we want to set aside overall for the city. This is what we're going to set aside, this is what we're going to spend, and here's how we're going to spend it. And we're going to walk through that process. So I caution to not put a fixed amount that's expected of that every year because you have to ebb and flow. with-
Well, and I understand
Right.
that the better thing is, but budget wise, it's, when the budget's written, there is an actual line item that says, beautification grant, this is how much money you have for this year. That's
Right,
it,
so-
no more, no less.
So that's what, council has already had that discussion that, I can't remember the dollar amount, was it?
25,000.
25,000.
But, okay,
You
so my
said
question,
25,000,
Okay,
no
so my
more than
question
that,
is-
so you don't have to spend all of that.
right, so right now we have 25,000 for that beautification grant and 49,000 for,
Yeah, is that still separate money or is that?
Can I chime in, please?
Oh, my God, it's not over there.
Yes. Please.
So I keep hearing about this 49,000. I mean, I'm kind of going back a little bit because I didn't unmute. I'm not concerned at all about whether something's called facade improvement or beautification grant or whatever it's called. It really means nothing to me. Like that doesn't matter. But I keep hearing reference to this $50,000, and I just want to. This isn't the previous administration. The way this was set up before was basically a blank check that the mayor said, go ahead and do what you want to do. This isn't that administration anymore. And once this council figured out that's how it was set up, we were pretty clear that that's not what's going on. So I think we should stop referring to that 50 grand as it's, oh, we have this much left to spend.
But it's still there.
If there's groups that are wanting to do something, bring the idea forward. If it sounds good, bring it to council and we vote on it. But I don't like, I'm still getting the vibe that it's like, people want to bring these projects forward and like, we have this money, this is what it's for. And there's like an expectation that it's gonna be paid for. The way the cities should work and the way government should work is it's not our money to just throw around and do whatever we want with. Now we've set it aside as we want to put this amount of money towards making the city look better. Cool, awesome, all for it. So whatever groups or individuals or whatever it is, or committees, whatever, come up with an idea, bring it to council. If it's a good idea, we vote on it, we vote yes, and it happens and it gets funded out of that money that's set aside. Now, currently in this budget process through, I believe the end of this year, there is that $49,000 that's there that was for this type of thing. But there needs to be a project brought forward to us and we need to approve it. Not just any one person coming up with ideas and just trying to push it through. That's all I got to say on it.
I'm just saying the Arts Commission is intending to bring these two ideas to council. That's all I'm saying.
Awesome,
And just
love it.
for clarity, is it 100% refundable to the facade people if doing improvements, or is it 50%? Because I've heard both. For people that read the paperwork, are thinking,
Applying for it?
yeah.
I believe it's 100%.
It's whatever they apply for.
It's
Up
100%.
to $5,000. Yeah.
Okay, just because they apply for 5,000 doesn't mean they get that whole
And they
5,000.
have to complete the full project.
Right, but they don't get awarded 5,000 and get 2,500 back. Okay, it's 100% of what they ask. Okay, thank
As long as they
you.
complete it too.
Yeah.
I think James makes more sense when he's not here. Good job, James.
It looks like an owl.
I'm pretty proud of James. I mean,
That was-
it's pretty good.
That was really good.
Let's pay attention.
I was like, that's exactly what she said.
I do have a question. Yeah. July 27th, where?
Community Center, 6:30.
Anything else on that? Okay,
I do
so,
have.
You missed your chance.
Sorry. I thought that would be an easier route for them to take.
Who won?
The Arts Commission, to do the
We were
application.
told that that's not what was gonna happen by who, I don't remember who.
I just feel like,
Blame Todd.
like, well.
Yeah, I know, the guy
that's.
that's.
And the guy that's not here.
He's not here. I was trying to
No,
shut you down.
I'm trying to, no, and Cody, I wanna ask you, when we talked about painting that wall in the park, you says, oh, don't worry, I already got the funds. Were those funds?
Which one?
Those funds we're talking about, 50,000 funds?
No, so
Your
that was
own-
just a.
Your own separate funds?
Yeah. It came out of the 302, it was its own separate fund. So, it's like its own line item in 302. For city park master plan improvements, that was designated.
Everybody's dipping into the same fund.
I don't want James
I don't
to
try to be
try
nice.
to.
Anyway.
anything else?
I'm done. Thank you so very
Okay,
much.
so it's my turn, and I'm going to read something. And I'm not going to mention any names, but it's just been on my heart and I feel passionate about it. So the statements made by a council member at our June 28th council meeting were, in my opinion, out of line. A council member had a concern, right or wrong is not the issue. The issue is that the council member posed their question and their comments in the appropriate process. They emailed the mayor and CC'd the city council through the city council email. And this is a venue to get answers to questions or concerns that we may have individually. It's something that is not for the public. I chose not to speak up at the council meeting as I wanted to make sure I had the facts straight before I spoke publicly. After the meeting adjourned, I asked the accused council member if they had had a conversation with the council member who brought the statements, and they stated they had not. And it appeared to me they were blindsided by the comments. That's my opinion. The council member whom the statements were about went on to tell me the question that they had and the comments were answered and resolved Friday or Saturday of that week. And so it was a non-issue. It was resolved before the council meeting. Had the council member communicated with the other council member, they would have learned it was resolved and hopefully would not have made their statement. As a council, we need to be able to work together. We will not always agree on everything, and that is okay. However, publicly calling someone out on something that had no business being made public to me is not okay. Going forward, I feel like I've lost a little bit of a level of trust. In my year plus on the council, I've only asked maybe 1 or 2 questions via email. And going forward, I may have to rethink that process. I've had council members disagree with things that I've said or written, but they came to me individually and not publicly to discuss. I appreciate that level of respect, and it is how I would handle any disagreement or issue I felt strongly about. And I would just hope that moving forward, we could communicate with each other better and first before going publicly making statements about each other. That's all I have.
Sounds good.
Anything else?
Thank you for sharing.
That it? Well, we don't adjourn this, do we?
It's up to you, but, we're adjourned.
Adjourn.
Okay.
Meeting adjourned.